What's up, amigos? Today we're going to go over Blue Wave. I'm going to cover card choices, problems that we need to mitigate, also some cool interactions, and my closing thoughts at the end as well with some stride plays. So let's get right into it. Check out Dueling Guard's deck boxes, playmats, and binders. The great quality products that are anime based. They continually have more anime options becoming available. Use the affiliated link in the description for a 5% discount on your next purchase. So real quickly, the things that we're going to focus on Blue Wave, we are playing both the Tetra Wave and also the Valeos as well. So first ride will be generating the Excel circle, whether it be Excel 1 or Excel 2. I'll talk more about it that you can do Excel 1 as well. And part of it is because like your second ride target after that will be Valeos, which you can get the 11k lock on your opponent. So triggers and OTs don't matter at that point, which is in Blue Wave's arsenal to begin with. Furthermore, the clan is also known to have restanding strides that we could focus, such as like Flood Hazard and Tetra Boil as well. And each has their unique case, but also with cards like Yay Wandering Souls and even the V promo, we have restanding Vanguard since turn 2. With the V promo, you have Tetra on your grade 3 turn, and then you have the strides. And so a card like Yay Wandering Souls gives them an additional drive check, which means more triggers. You could potentially plus and just have more crit pressure that way potentially. And it's really fun just to take advantage of that. So just think of that as we go through the rest of the deck profile. Starting off with the grade 3s, we are playing 4 of the Tetra-drive. This is your first ride target, so you want to see it and maximize on it. And you can go Excel 1 or Excel 2. Excel 2, if you really need to get that extra draw to have like a combo piece, and if basically your hand breaks at that point potentially, or if you feel like you benefit from also just going to Excel 2 to draw and then go into Gem Bolt immediately as well. But Excel 1 really does help have an aggression moving forward with your game, so you can sacrifice that one card to have some really nice aggression throughout your game in general. What's cool about Tetra-drive is that it potentially restands twice, so you have 3 Vanguard attacks. So having the additional drive check with the Wandering Souls, chances of triggers. So your first attack will be 3 drive checks, then 2, and then 2 again. So you'll see a total of 7 drive checks. Then following up, as I mentioned before, you want to ride into Valeos afterwards and then immediately stride, because when you stride a unit with Blue Wave in the name, you can Soul Blast 1 Blue Wave to 11k lock your opponent. Your starter is also Blue Wave, so that takes care of that. But you also play Blue Wave units throughout your grade 1 and grade 2, and then of course if you're riding over Tetra, you'll have more Blue Wave in the name just in case you need to successfully use it turn by turn, or if you already Soul Blasted like other stuff for other card effects too. And also puts the opponent where like if they're at low damage, they really have to consider losing cards ahead of time if they really want to like guard pokes. And at this point, as long as something's 11k, it's going to hit. The next grade 3 that we're playing is 2 copies of Arsenal Fleet, and this guy is a restander, but he's also a card that can return to hand from the drop zone by Soul Blasting 1 whenever it sees your Blue Wave Vanguard stand, essentially. So during the paying the costs, like if you discard it, it'll actually trigger to see that the Vanguard restands after paying the cost, essentially. So you can use it immediately and then grab it back, essentially, so you don't lose advantage. And it's a way to kind of plus. It's also a grade 3, so you can use that as the pitch to stride as well. And you rather keep your other combo pieces to do your turn. Keep in mind that the drop zone skill is not GB restricted, so you can do this as early on as the grade 3 turn. And if your opponent's at grade 2, you can still take advantage of his recovery skill, essentially. However, the restanding skill that it has on the second battle is GB restricted, so that's the main difference. It also is a Blue Wave in the name, and that comes up more with also Flood Hazard, because Flood Hazard has to see a Blue Wave attack the Vanguard on the 4th battle. Lastly, we see 4 grade 3 heals. I was playing the 3-1 ratio just to have like the counter charge, soul charge. It's also a Blue Wave. You can add that card with other cards too, but I went back to the grade 3 heals fully because you need to survive early game, potentially against aggressive decks. Furthermore, it's another grade 3 that you could pitch to stride, and it's also a way to like stay at low damage. But if you need to call this as a body too on your grade 3 turn, it's a 10k body. So if you want to really maximize out of the Tetra-drive skill, you can call it from your hand at that point too. Also, if your opponent somehow damage denies you, at that point you could also give yourself a damage that way too, just to make sure you have a counterblast for something that you need for that turn. Onto the order section. So we are playing 3 copies of Yay Wandering Souls. We want to see it enough where it can be easily seen, right? Early game at the right time is great. It also has to pitch another order card to be able to be used, so you get the additional drive check. So you have to keep in mind that if you're going first, you need other copies of this or other orders in your main deck to be able to successfully use this card. However, if you're going second, you immediately get the ticket shields, and if you use the Messiah to get the 20k shield, you could just easily discard the 5k shield for the cost of Yay Wandering Souls when going second. And you can save that till later as well, so that way if you're already in the stride turns, you can just discard the shields for your Wandering Souls in case you don't have any other orders in hand. It just makes it a lot easier to use. And the next orders that we're playing are Meteoric Habitat and of course Elementario Sanctitude. So I wanted another order that actually did something in case I didn't see Ye Wandering Souls, or if I had to make the choice, I would be able to like benefit from it. And the card is Meteoric because of many reasons. So early on, when you're trying to build a field, you need to look through your deck still. So there's no point for cards like Spiritual Body Condensation, and to a degree, Frozen Resentment helps, but it only checks the top 3 versus this is check top 7. And if you need a certain units, it's more likely to see it with seeing 7 cards instead of 3, essentially. Furthermore, if you go into like the Jumbo turns, for example, and you check the top 7 to cause something, you could choose this order as a target because of its skills, and then instead of actually going to the drop zone, it'll go to your hand as well. So that's another way to like fish for it. And what's really cool is that if you already have the Wandering Souls, you can immediately use it because now you have another order to pay the cost for because of Jumbo's play skill. So you could have Jumbo have quad check just because, right? But also moving forward, you can save that for later for like Flood Hazard turns or Tetra Boy turns. You could also use Meteoric early on too, like your grade 2 turn or your grade 3 turn if you're trying to do Tetra. That can get you the grade, that can give you the rigor that you're missing to make that like formation much more impactful. Sanctitude is still really good, especially now that we have History Collection in the metagame. A lot of decks, when they go first, they just stride. So this is going to be a 1-card PG. This also gets around like guard restriction types of skills. So think of like Morfessa, Bartholomew. And it's another order to use against Shiranui Rin. So that way you don't lose immediately right away with that card too. Also, because we do play a good amount of orders, you're more than likely can choose these cards as discard too. The deck still functions without Ye Wandering Souls. So you can just use this as fodder for the Shiranui matchup as well. Now for grade 2 units, we are playing 4 copies of Repressed Strike Dragon, and this card is phenomenal. This is one of the cards that made me even reconsider Blue Wave again because for both its skills. The first skill is a restanding skill, and it works on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. And if it so happens to be the 4th battle, it gets an additional 10k until the end of the turn. And if of course it was on the Vanguard, you had to immediately discard a card in order to pay the cost to fully restand it as a Vanguard. So this kind of makes it fair essentially. But the only requirement is that you need a booster and a counterblast, of course. But it's easy to do on grade 2 turn. If you do this with Ye Wandering Souls, you will go Twin Drive and then restand again and then Twin Drive again. So you'll see 4 drive checks on your turn 2, which is pretty nutty at that point too. So the other skill is very helpful too because of the orders. You have to reduce like grade 2s, grade 1s, and potentially grade 3s. So you have less of them to potentially ride them as you go up. And so that means your deck is less consistent when it comes to ride consistency. So having the discard skill when your Vanguard is grade 1 or less to grab a grade 2 or less is perfect for this deck too. So this card like really shines in Blue Wave as well. So then the rest of the normal units, you're thinking about like other types of restanders too, because you want to make sure that you have a Blue Wave unit that hits the 4th, that attacks on the 4th battle for Flood Hazard. Everything else, it could be generic. So you're constantly assessing other cards like Algos, for example, Tidal Assault, and many other variations of Tidal Assault as well. But I picked Terrific Coil because more than likely the rigor that you're going to use to restand is the 1st and 2nd battle. Then your Vanguard can be the 3rd battle, and then you can stack any triggers onto the Vanguard or on the unit that's going to attack on the 4th battle. So you might as well get something like Terrific Coil that gets power on attack, Soul Blast, restand it immediately. If it's stood by an effect, it gets plus 5k, continuous effect. So it only gets it once essentially. However, if you pair it up with Excel 1, this becomes 24. This gets over a trigger threshold, which is really nice. You could also use other cards, such as Alania, that will revive it and also get the additional 5k. So if you fall back to Excel 2, you can still make that threshold too. And so you may be asking, why am I playing 3 copies of Alania too? It's kind of like counterintuitive because you're looking for restanders. You want revival cards in Aquaforce decks in general too, especially with Blue Wave, because you need certain combo pieces to really make your turn impactful. A lot of the pieces that you need are grade 2 or less, and then the grade 3 that returns back to hand from drop is the Arsenal Fleet, so that already takes care of itself. That's why we don't even play for Bitodal, if you have noticed. But with Alania, you're able to give power to that rigor, especially if you're going first with that Tetra turn, and this is a 10k body. So even if your opponent's on a grade 2 with a 10k body, this can also hit on its own, and it's a body compared to like Frozen Resentment or Spiritual Body Condensation because it's a 1-for-1. This stays on the board, and now you can actually have enough rear guards with minimal resources to still do the attacks, so you can do restanding shenanigans with Tetra. In the late game too, you could just grab other pieces that you need like Corvettes or Repressed Strike Dragons for bigger beefy columns, and many other cards too that I'll highlight in the grade 1s. Now for the grade 1s, we're playing 4 copies of Corvette. This card is phenomenal. It's really hard to not play this card, essentially. And the reason I say that is because, so when its attack or the attack that it boosted hits the Vanguard, you can check the top 3 for a blue wave card and then bottom deck the rest. This gives you potential plussing. It's also pressure for your opponent because it has to, like, they have to constantly think about it if they want to guard that attack. What's really cool too is the first skill is a continuous regard skill where if you have a blue wave Vanguard, it gets continuous 5k. This is a 13k beater. It hits by itself. Not only that, it's a 13k booster, so you can make better columns, and it's a good booster for Repressed Strike Dragon because you're going to need one anyway. And then if you have the blue wave Vanguard, and this is on a regard column with the Repress, 13 plus 9 is 22, so that's a better number against like Protect and Excel decks, for example. And also you can have that pressure on that first attack where you boost, and it's a little bit bigger compared to the second attack where you've hoped already put triggers onto it, essentially. So your opponent's like, now I gotta guard this on top of that too. The rest of the grade 1s are also blue waves. So 2 Barraggio's V series, 2 of the G series, and then 2 of the Propulsion Dragon. So let me talk about Barraggio's first. And so just so you know, you can only play 4 copies of the unit with the same name. So if they're different like VG or D series, you can only play a total of maximum 4. So that's why there's a 2-2 split here. The V series Barraggios, along with the Corvette, are really like 6 writable grade 1s that I like to have early on. And you get to benefit from their Vanguard skills as well. Where Barraggios can check the top 5 at a grade 3 and then you discard a card. This is a great card to grab your arsenal fleet and then immediately discard it. It sets that up in the drop zone for later on. You could also get your Tetras if you haven't seen it, or set up for Valeos later on too if you need to see Valeos still from your deck as well. You could also get the grade 3 heals, and that's another reason why I bumped it up to 4, is just in case you go second and you need to really survive. And also maximize from like you ain't wandering souls, especially if you got like the ticket shields to pay the cost as well. So just having those grade 3 heals ASAP in those moments are very crucial. And then with the G Barraggios, so when we saw this in G series, we essentially assumed that this is just a restanding booster. However, when Excel became a thing, and then also you could potentially power up with units such as like Alania or Spiritual Body Condensation, cards like that, this becomes a free restander. If you think about it, it's the second skill. So whenever it sees a Vanguard with blue wave in the name stand, this unit stands as well. For free, that's it, right? So if you put in an Excel 2 circle or it got a 5k power up, it's 12k. So it get hit against 12k or lower Vanguards. Especially now that we're in a meta game that some people are playing 11ks because of history collection strides. Secondly, you could also use Excel 1 to make this unit at least 17k, but again, if you get a 5k power up, that makes it 22. Now this essentially attacks just as your Vanguard attacks. And what I mean by that is that if your Vanguard's going to attack twice, this can attack twice that turn. However, on the turn 3 with Tetra-drive has the potential to attack 3 times. This means this will attack 3 times as well. In fact, you want to see this ideally with another restander like Terrific Coil to really maximize that turn and making sure that you can even take advantage of the third Vanguard attack's triggers to stack onto the remaining rearguard that's still standing, which will be this guy. Part of me wishes that I want to play more copies of this because it's free and it's a restander. However, there's only so much room. And also, you can only play so many Barraggios. And then the last thing is because it's 5k shield. It's a weak shield card, so you really appreciate the 10k. And that's why even a card like Propulsion Dragon is good because it has the 10k shield. It also has a way to essentially swap with a unit and cause an additional attack that way. It's once per turn at the end of the battle that this unit attacked a grade 2 or greater Vanguard. You can counterblast, swap with something from the back row, and then when this is swapped, restand this as basically your future booster for that column. So it's a really good card to be able to use. It just causes a counterblast. But it's also V series, so it has the 10k shield and it's 8k base as well. And as you notice, your grade 1 lineup is blue wave, so you'll be able to use in succession multiple Valeos if needed to, depending if you haven't soul blasted too much. Onto the remaining grade 0s, we're playing the blue wave starter. And I wish there was an SP. Unfortunately, it's just a common. But it has blue wave in the name, which is good because Valeos is set for that game, essentially. Then for crits, we're playing 3 of the Stride Fodder, 3 of the Thavas crit, and then 2 of the Brutal Trooper. So you may be asking, like, this ratio looks weird, and essentially what I was trying to do is like, how can I benefit from all these triggers? Because they're all good, right? You have the Stride Fodder because you need to stride, keep certain cards, especially if you want to keep a Valeos in your hand for the following turn to ride. You rather pitch some other type of Stride Fodder, essentially. But you also got the errata Petros from Davos's history collection stuff that when it's damage check, you get to draw a card. It's basically a draw trigger. So I wanted to help that early game, potentially that you need to take damage, but also you should benefit from it, from drawing, essentially. And that can get you pieces that you're missing to be able to do your turns. And then lastly, it's the Brutal Trooper, because when this goes back to deck and you have a Blue Wave Vanguard and you choose one of them, it gets the direct tech skill where on the second battle or more, it attacks a Vanguard, you draw a card. And this is not once per turn. So if you have a restanding Vanguard, you draw 2. If you have like the Tetra turn, this is not GB, so it works. So Tetra will draw 3 cards in the process of all those attacks, right? 1 per each attack, essentially. So it's a really good card. However, it's weak. It's 5k power, it's 10k shield. You have Repressed Strike Dragon. That's not a blue wave on grade 2 turn. So there are tricks that I've done before where I can just immediately shove it back and have my Vanguard attack second on the turn 2. So I just recycle it back, but also it just makes it more scarier for your opponent, and you dig deeper into a better piece for the next following turn, essentially. Also, to keynote, later on in the stride game, this makes it easier to return crits back, so it has that crit pressure. But if you're really low on deck size, you can choose 0 Vanguards. And so that means basically your Vanguard won't inherit the skill, but the card goes back to deck. And why would you do that? It's because that way you don't deck out. So you could just return cards and your opponent's like, ooh, like if you use that skill, you're going to deck out, or you're already about to deck out, you're one card off, and then it's like, boom, let me fix that with a Brutal Trooper. Thought I mentioned that tip. Then we're playing 3 draw PGs to Pascals. We need draw power, and then also we need Sentinel. We need PGs, essentially. And then Blessed Favor. It's really the trigger that's really good overall, especially for this deck. I've considered the red OT, but it's just another attack in that point, and it's like we kind of just benefit from having a front trigger because we do have a front row. We can benefit from the draw power, we can benefit from the healing, and then also giving crit. So it just works out. So Blessed Favor is just good overall in most game states too, so I prefer it. So with the G-Zone, I'll mention what's quickly, but then highlight the main stuff. So you got the Harmex Messiah, because you want to get the ticket. You got Balanara for guard restriction purposes. You got Ferragus for restaining a field potentially later on, or if you go first stride. Jumbo can be an ideal first stride if you're going second as well, so you need to generate advantage and do those tricks I mentioned, like Mithriok. Also, you can go the Brutal Trooper too, and then return the Brutal Trooper, and then at that point you can just fix your field the way you want it to. And then you get to draw a new card when Jumbo attacks as well. So you could do like little things like that too with the blue wave crits. You got Alexandros as well. That could be nail in the coffin later on. You have Vallejo. So this is just in case you're out of soul. This is another alternative where you can use a counterblast to 11k your opponent. And also if you don't see Vallejo's in your main deck too. There would be weird games where you just don't see it. So you could at least stride into the Vallejo's version and then rely on that. Then for the package of 2 Flood Hazard and 2 Tetra Boil. So Flood Hazard is the one that gets the additional check when it's GB3. So on the first attack, it'll be quad check, and then you lose 3 checks from restanding, which goes down to 1. Now with the Wandering Souls, you'll have 5 checks and then 2 checks for a total of 7 drive checks. Really powerful turn. Tetra Boy was here because if you go first, you do your shenanigans, and then it comes back to you. But before it does, you G-guarded. You're GB2 when you stride, so you can go into Tetra Boil without losing advantage compared to like Flood Hazard. Flood Hazard has to have like GB3 as soon as you're strided at that point to really like break even. Other than that, your discarding 2 hurts more than it helps sometimes. So I like to have both options. And what's cool with Wandering Souls with Tetra Boil, since it's like twin drive and twin drive, now it becomes triple drive and triple drive. So it becomes a lot more impactful stride just in general. Also, it's generic too, so if you just don't have a blue wave that can attack the 4th battle, or if your opponent uses like a disruptive play to get rid of your blue wave unit, then you can't restand with Flood Hazard. So you can always fall back to Tetra Boil as well. There's another card that you can remove and add a 3rd Flood Hazard. I've considered this, and essentially one of the pair will restand because it persona flips, but the 3rd won't. But the reason that you would even play it is because you could stride it and you'll be GB3 anyway, so you'll be a quad check Vanguard with blue wave in the name. And if you're already on Vallejo's, you can 11k lock as well on that turn. So that's still something. And then if you do Wandering Souls on that turn, it goes quintet, essentially. So you could still benefit from that too as well. So that's another consideration. I want to show off a turn 2 play. So again, Wandering Souls onto it. So you get the additional drive check. Then have a booster for the Vanguard, ideally Corvette. And then do the skill, kind of last one. Restand, discard a card. And this will be 9 plus 8, so 17 with twin drive. 1, 2. Then attack again. 1, 2. An example grade 3 Tetra turn, you want to have a setup like this. You can use Alania to revive Barragios, give it 5k as well. Make sure you use Wandering Souls to give you the additional drive check. First attack, terrific. Skill, Soul Blast 1, restand. Gets 5k, so 14 on first attack. Then Alania, 10k. Then Vanguard, triple drive. You can give power to the Vanguard just to have pressure. Second, critical, you can do it all in the Vanguard actually. Just to have the crit pressure. And then another card. This can be 22. Since the 4th battle, skill, discard 2 cards. Any of these. Restands. Barragios triggers, restands as well for free. This will attack next, 14 plus 13, 27. On hit pressure as well. Vanguard attacks. This is 32 with crit. So now twin drive, 1, 2. This is from the deck profile, so that's why it's nutty. But anyway, any triggers onto Vanguard or Barragios as well. 22 plus, and at the end of the battle, the skill. And you can use the counterblast from the prior Alania as well. And then the second counterblast can now be Tetra and discard a card to restand. And then of course Barragios also stands again for free. And then Vanguard once more with twin. And then again, Barragios, the last, that benefits from that drive check as well. 7 drive checks in total, 3 Vanguard attacks, 1 of the reguards attacking 3 times. And that's the deck profile, amigos. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk about my thoughts on it too with the deck compared to like Thavas, for example. Also, quick credit to my amigos in the Discord as well. Special thanks to Shiga, Marine Williams, Malefic Zero, Counter Guardian Flagberg, Duke Cardfight, and others that I may have missed. You guys in my server are awesome because you guys have the enthusiasm for even Blue Wave, and I appreciate that for your playtesting and also ideas as well. So this wasn't just me. And so my thoughts with it, I can't help it to compare it to Thavas, and I'm sure other players are the same way. So essentially, I think Thavas in this metagame is still the proper pick. One of the benefits because Thavas can pick out the Valeos and have its own copies in it, and then having a pair of Flood Hazard, just like I did with my recent profile too. So Thavas has more tools and other things going for it, especially since it also had access to the History Collection Stride that lets you stride if you go first. Sometimes you just don't have all the pieces for a grade 3 Tetra-drive turn, and if you don't, it kind of just sucks to be upfront with that. So it's a little bit of a glass cannon feel. However, Blue Wave has its own aesthetic where it has all these niche cards, but the most appealing aesthetic is that from turn 2 to your grade 3 to your stride turns, you're always going to have a restanding Vanguard along with restanding reguards. So if you like that aesthetic, then I would suggest the deck for sure, just even for fun or even competitive if you're really that determined to take it and try to top yourself. Blue Wave does have a special place in my heart because it was my first top, and it was also my first video on this channel from the start. So I always keep it in the back of my mind moving forward too with like updates like these. Also, if you want to see more like stride combos, I only covered like 2 plays essentially, but if you want to see like a Gembold and Alexandros turns, you can go to my old video, and most of it pretty much still applies for those turns. So feel free to check that out and skip to the sections that you care for. If you want to improve your skills within the clan or even BCS prep, I offer one-on-one coaching, so happy to help out where I can. Check out my MetaFight info. Also, if you want to support the channel, use the affiliate links such as like TCG Player, 50 Card Shop, Trading Card Mint, Card Trader Zero, and also check out Dueling Guard for their phenomenal anime swag on deck boxes, binders, and playmats. On to the next one, amigos. Bye!